Hello everybody and welcome to a game called The Falconers Moonlight. It's a very quick look of a demo that I don't know what this says up here, so if anyone can tell me I would appreciate that. Let's just get right into it, shall we? It looked awesome. So I was like, hey, why not try it out for the channel? The artwork was really good too. I mean, look at that. That's amazing. Her red-rimmed eyes watched him walk away. Her shivering hands unfolded the chisel from its hiding place in her dress. Her white lips drew back from teeth that were strong yet crooked in the front and stained light yellow from the tobacco she pilfered each day from her father's tin. Father had told her never to give up, never let anyone treat her like dirt, never to take no for an answer. She gripped the chisel tightly in her hand and took a trembling step towards the path. The glint of the chisel blade served to calm her, to light her way. She took another step forward, this one more steady, more ready than the first. Better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. She'd teach this man, the so-called lover, the true meaning of love and loss. She launched forward, about to break into a run. Her boot never touched the ground. It burst from the forest faster than the fevered mind could even register. It took her in its great arms, barbs like sharpened bone tearing through her dress, sinking into her flesh. They carried her off into the mist before she could even scream. Whoa. Moonlight, a town grown too used to mourning those it had lost. 65 men destined to die in a pitch-black hole deep underground. Their bodies dragged up from the earth just so they can be put right back in it again. As a falconer, I suppose I should be used to death. It's my tool and my trade. I deal it out so that others might escape its claws. The world we live in, it's not so hospitable. Not so tamed as we like to think. These towns, just like Moonlight, they try to look like they belong. These people, they think building a house is the same as making a home. They don't know whose home they've stolen until the killers come for them. I leave the mourners to shovel the dirt over the dearly departed. I ride through Moonlight on streets of freshly turned mud. The buildings have been cut and sawn from the virgin forest that surrounds this town on all sides. This place was once lush, wet green as far as the eye could see. Gold has a habit of changing all that. The Moonlight Hotel is just ahead. Its warm innards holding the promise of a bath, a hot meal, and respite from the bone-chilling mist. As I draw close, I get to thinking about my mission here. About the disappearance that George Moonlight spoke of in his letter to the Order of the Falcon. About this mining accident that killed 65 men. If those two things are connected, then I'm not a falconer. Yes, coincidences exist, but they're far more rare than people tend to believe. The proprietor of the Moonlight Hotel, Mary Suncliffe, greets me at the door. Her bright smile clashes mightily with the black dress she wears out of respect for the town's recent tragedy. Welcome to Moonlight Hotel, Miss Winter. Call me Casey. And you're Mary Suncliffe, I'm guessing. Please call me Sunlight. Most people around here do. On account of your sunny disposition. Her smile grows just that little bit wider. She sure does have pretty teeth. Not something to be taken for granted in a backcountry mining town like this. The staff are drawing a bath for you right now, and dinner's in the bar in an hour. Thank you kindly. My pleasure. Oh, and the wake will start about then, too. The wake? Most of the miners, the ones lost in the accident, were Irish. A few Scots. It's tradition for them to drink hard and toast those that have passed. So what you're saying is if I want to get any sensible answers out of these people tonight, I should aim for between rounds 3 and 5, right? My thoughts exactly. Mary Suncliffe lived up to her nickname. Well, she certainly brightened my day. One purifying bath and a delicious meal later, I found myself with a pint of the local miner's dark in my hand and a bar full of townsfolk to question. Most people don't know about the Kohlers, and those that do tend to wish they did not. But there's a lot of Falconer can learn from what people think they can tell you, what they think they've seen and heard, and most of all, what they really don't want to tell you. I caught Sunlight's eye and she fixed me with that blinding smile of hers. Another brew, Cassie? No, some advice. Regarding? Who here has the sharpest eyes and the biggest mouth? Sharpest eyes, Wecca Jones. He's a gambler, a good one. Doesn't miss a trick at the table, or anywhere else that I've noticed. And the mouth? That belonged to Biddy Goodwin. So that'd be Big Mouth giving Sharp Eyes an earful in the corner there. Yes, now's probably a good time to start your question, Falconer, before Weka ends up with one of them Bitey's bullets in him. Kill two birds with one stone, eh? You get some answers and I don't have to get my mop and bucket out. On my way. Much obliged. I sidle over to the arguing pair and catch the tail end of their Barney. You and Maggie goes into the bush, only you comes back. Might be bloody suspicious if you ask me, Weka. No one did ask you, Biddy. Maggie would if she was here. So where is she? I don't know. Better count cars and corpses, eh, gambler? That's enough. Enough? How many folk you gotta vanish into the mist before really enough? That's when Biddy's hands started creeping down to the rusted revolver on her belt, and I figured it was time to intercede. Biddy Goodwin. Biddy glared at me with a face like one of those old potatoes left too long in the bottom of the sack. The eyes even matched. Don't think I'd ever seen eyes so dark and full of spite. Who's asking? Like I made the most of the distraction and beat a hasty retreat. I need to talk to him at some point, but I didn't think I'd get a straight answer out of Biddy while the gambler was still in range of that antique shooter of hers. The one's been hired to get to the bottom of these disappearances. Oh yeah, who hired you? Captain Moonlight. Biddy laughed up some phlegm and spat it out on the carpet just shy of my boots. Did you burn the cheating old bastard's cash? The gobshite responsible just scampered out the door. Why do you think it's Weka? Didn't nobody disappear until Jones rode into town all fancy on his black horse. Saw him go into the bush with Maggie Matthews with my own eyes. She finishes the statement with a healthy pull from her whiskey bottle. Southern Sauce read the label. I've heard of the stuff. Smooth as honey and hard as a horse kick between the eyes. Brewed by some Highland bootleggers in the deep south. How Biddy was getting a hold of stuff was anybody's guess. When was that? Last night, just sunset. Had you been drinking? No more than usual. Maggie's not been seen since. That's right. Weka's done for, that's what. What about the others that have gone missing? You saw any of them go into the bush with Weka? I didn't think it was possible. Bitey's face grew even more wrinkles as I puckered up in thought. Looked like another spit was brewing, one bitter with the answer she turned up in that whiskey-soaked brain of hers. Biddy Goodwin, you spit on my carpet again, I'll be spitting you out onto the street. Biddy glowered at Sunlight, but refrained from expectorating all the same. Nope, I'm not saying we're going to the bush with Weka. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened, mind you. Well, judging by his attire, I doubt Weka ventures into the bush much at all. Would I be wrong there? Suppose not. Do you have much cause to go out into the bush, Biddy? Biddy's eyes gleamed, black and hateful. Her hand started crawling for the gun again. I'd leave that piece of yours where it is, Miss Goodwin. The condition it's in, it'd likely blow up in your face. Might ruin those lovely looks of yours. Biddy regarded me with a silent loathing, but her hand spoke for her, shifting from gun to bottle quicker than I had expected of someone of her age and insobriety. And as she drank, her eyes switched from me to the bar and grew even a shade darker. Someone had walked in that Biddy hated even more than me right now. Out of the corner of my eye caught a finely tailored jacket, Neatly trimmed dark beard, slick black hair with iron temples and gleaming black boots. Miss Winter. I'll be right with you, Captain Moonlight. Oi, King George. When you plan to get off my land? My land, you sold it fair and square. Moonlight's response was a chuckle of more well-practiced patience. Yeah, like the blood I'm gonna put square between those cheating eyes of yours, Moonlight. Careful now, Biddy. That sort of talk will earn you a night in the goal. At least Biddy had a good sense to shut her mouth from that point on. Instead, she muttered something about King George and some unseemly carnal acts not worth repeating, and stalked towards the door. And good night to you, Miss Goodwin. Please don't try to leave town. The wizened miner tipped her bottle, a mocking version of a salute, and then she was gone. My apologies, Miss Winters. Biddy is not one of our more peace-loving citizens. I can't say I have all that much time for peace myself. I can try and keep it, but it never seems to want to stay, you know. Such is the life of a Falconer, I suppose. I'll drink to that. We talked for some time, George Moonlight and I, going over the finer details of his contract with the Order of the Falcon. Should the cause of the disappearances transpire to be human in origin, a sizable donation will be made to the Order of the Falcon, in thanks for re-establishing civil rest in the town of Moonlight. Should it come to light that the town's troubles be color in nature, then an even larger sum would be donated to the Order in return for hunting down and dispatching said colors. That's a pretty standard contract, really. I'd seen its like many times before, on many a prior mission. Although, in all honesty, this was the first one I'd signed for myself. My first solo mission. Not something I divulged to Captain Moonlight, of course. Thought it might shake his confidence in me. In fact, probably best if I don't mention it again, not even in my own head. Might end up shaking my own confidence. Since George was buying, I sank a few more pints before taking myself off to bed. Mostly to ease the aches of the road, but a little to loosen the knot of fear in my belly. The next morning brought more mist. Sunlight's famous wild bacon and egg pie, and a decision to make. Well, we gotta talk to Weka. We haven't talked to him yet. I wasn't buying Biddy's accusations of serial murder, but Maggie Matthews has still not turned up, and Weka was the last person to see her. Here's hopes a little heart-to-heart with Weka will provide some useful insights. I found Weka dicing for gold dust with a pair of Chinese miners. I watched them for a little while from across the street, focusing on those dice as they tumbled across the porch boards of Flynn's general store. By the sixth roll, I'd become damn sure those dice were loaded. So I popped back into the Moonlight Hotel, borrowed a glass of water, and sauntered real casual-like over to Weka and his prey. Then I intercepted the dice mid-tumble and ignored the results, complaining as I dropped the dice into my glass. And sure enough, they both settled onto the bottom, sixes down, snake eyes staring up at me. The miners looked at Weka, and Weka looked back. I dropped my glass and drew my guns before anyone had time to do anything stupid. At that point, Weka proved himself to be a man of good sense, handing back the miner's dust and some extra sterling as way of apology. He even managed an amused smile as the miners stalked off down the street, headed for the Moonlight Hotel to no doubt celebrate their narrow escape from misfortune. I beg your pardon, Miss Winter, but shouldn't you be out hunting for lost folk rather than trying to spoil my good reputation? Such as one Maggie Matthews. I don't know where she is. I didn't say you did, Mr. Jones. Then what are you saying? I'm not. I'm asking. Why did the two of you part ways at Giggling Glade? The question caught him off guard, as intended. You make it a habit of prying into the personal matters of innocent gentlemen. Yes, I do. So, was she not as sweet as you had hoped? Your little bush liaison not go as planned? Quite the opposite. You can spare me the sticky details, just the facts, please. She threw herself at me and I gracefully declined her affections. Sort of thing happened to you often, Mr. Jones. Please call me a werewolf. Case. Whoa, hello. We shook hands and performed what the Maori call a hongi. Traditional pressing of noses and respectful greeting. Apparently, it's about sharing the breath of life together. And I have to admit, I could see why the ladies fancy this Weremu Jones. Well presented, well mannered, and with eyes like rich dark chocolate. Women love chocolate. Yes, unfortunately so. And I make a point of never taking advantage. It's the way my mother raised me. My mother taught me to shoot any man that looked at me funny. Then we both had the counsel of wise women. I guess so. But let's spare a thought for Maggie's mother now, shall we? Alright, Maggie took my rejection rather badly. Unrequited love. It's not an easy thing to hear. She threatened to tell the town that I'd taken her by force. Oh. You can imagine how that would have gone. The word of a Maori man against that of a Pakeha woman, the daughter of a respected carpenter. You'd have been hanging by the tree at sunset. Exactly. I have to admit, though, Weremu, it's a pretty good motive for murder, wouldn't you say? Most folks around here would agree with you, which is why I was in the process of hustling up some funds for a hasty departure from town. That is, until you rather elegantly foiled my hustle. Looks like you have to stay and prove your innocence, then, Weremu. Is that your way of saying if you try to leave town, I'll shoot you? You're a smart man. Explains why I'm still alive. And with that, he just strolled off down the street, swinging his cane and whistling, just a cheerful gentleman taking his morning constitutional. Though the sun was weak in the gray sky, there was just enough warmth now to have lifted the mist off the brush a little. I had enough time to pay Biddy Goodwin a visit before I'd have to venture out into the damp forest to discover the fate of Maggie Matthews for myself. Found Biddy taking her first slug of liquid breakfast from her whiskey bottle. It seemed Biddy was a believer in the hair of the dog cure for hangovers. Essentially, in order to prevent hangovers, just don't stop drinking. You shot Weka yet? Nope, and you're not going to either. Why is that? Apart from you getting hung for it? Yep, I already thought of that. Doing neck exercises twice a day. I don't think that would help. Alright then, how about innocent until proven guilty? Biddy cackled into her bottle. Ain't the way life works, not my experience. Is that why you spend your time picking fights, is it? Somebody's gotta keep the bastards of the world honest. Bastards like Captain Moonlight? What's your beef with him? She pointed down the street at a primitive construction of a stone, wrestling iron, and rotting timber that served her as a house. That's all I got now. King George took the rest of that bloody mine of his. He's of the opinion that you sold it to him. Yeah, I signed a piece of paper. Piece of paper was said my land was nothing more than a clay and rock. Not worth farming, not worth digging for gold neither. The same land that now holds the biggest and richest gold mine in the area? Why did you take his word for it? I didn't. Government surveyor did. You think George paid the surveyor off? Sure as shit on a sheep's arse he did. If it was true, then Biddy had a genuine bone to pick with King George. I'm going to ask you this straight, Biddy, so don't go getting all offended and trying for that rusty antique of yours. Ask me what, Falconer? Did you have anything to do with the accident? Biddy's face took on the puckered look of a rotten apple, and her mouth started working side to side, like she was preparing a nice, juicy spit for my face. But then the moment passed, her face softened, and she simply took another sip at her whiskey. I know. I'm sorry. I'll have as sorry as them. And it weren't no accident. No? Not with Jimmy Corbett in charge of those explosives. Didn't talk much, did Jimmy? Too busy worrying about his dynamite, about gas pockets, about lighted matches in wrong places. Jimmy Worry, the others called him. And with Jimmy Worry down their mind, nobody else need bother with it. Could Jimmy have made a mistake? Could I go a day without a drink? I took that as a no. Thanked Biddy for her time and thought about Jimmy Worry as I followed the nearest path headed for the bush. When an accident kills 65 men turns out not to be an accident, 9 times out of 10 there's a core behind it. Falconer spent a few hundred years working that one out. I followed the narrow trail through the damp forest, the mist still concealing much that should have been in view at this time of the day. Maybe what if the colors were having something to do with it? They could bend nature to their wicked will, even the weather sometimes. so Little Mist was probably well within their capabilities. Had I known the job involved being constantly wet and clammy, I'm not sure I would have signed up to be a Falconer in the first place, but I suppose it's a small sacrifice for getting to save the world. A couple of curious fantails danced in the air about me as I walked. I shouted back to them, doing my best impression of a cork rubbed against the neck of a bottle. Some would see a visitation from a fantail as a bad omen, but from memory it's just when a fantail flies into your house. Then it's come to say something, and it's usually never good news. Someone's going to die before the night is done. Out here in the bush, they're just saying hello. The Saki Trail broke out into a picturesque glade. Giggling glade, currently empty of lip-locked lovers. I had no idea if I'd be able to draw anything out of this place, but I had to try. Something had happened here, something tragic, something terrifying, something that could have left an imprint. I needed to see it. I positioned myself in the center of the glade, closed my eyes, and I reached out with my mind and braced myself to bear witness, as I'd been taught in Hong Kong. There was Maggie Matthews, hands balled into fists, tears running down her cheeks, glowering at Weka's back as he disappeared down the path. I saw her muster herself, dark thoughts swirling about her like opium smoke, and draw one of her father's chisels from the folds of her dress. Chisel brandished, she started after Weka, her first step trembling, the second stronger, the third. She didn't get to make the third. A shadow burst from the forest and took Maggie mid-step, a blur of predation and monstrosity. A color. Maggie Matthews was gone before she could even scream. I opened my eyes, took some deep breaths, and waited until my heart slowed from a gallop to a canter. Then I set off into the bush, starting at the point where Maggie and the color had breached the tree line. The color had left nothing but to betray its path. No physical sign that any tracker, no matter how skilled, could have followed. So I closed my eyes, committed my mind to empty darkness, and listened to the dying echoes of Maggie's terror and pain. I followed that sorry trail all day until the sun lurked low over the damp hills. The shadows were long, and the day nearly done when I saw the first physical sign that I was in Kohler territory. A miner's boot half submerged in mud, rotted leaves, disturbed by a body dragged, a severed finger still buried its wedding ring. Ugh. I drew my guns and crept through the bush, taking each step with silent, painstaking care. As I moved, I scanned my surroundings, searching for the barest movement of fern leaf or frond. A flash of color that didn't belong, a whisper of air displaced, anything that might signal imminent attack. The forest remained as quiet and somber as a crypt. The birds have long since fled. At last I saw a break in the trees ahead, a clearing filled with evening sunlight. I paused to wipe the nervous sweat from the handles of my pistols, blow softly on my palms to dry them. If I dropped one of my guns, it'd be the last mistake I'd ever make. Then I pressed on, sneaking, watching, until at least I reached the edge of the clearing. There I hunkered down behind a decaying pile of punga and took a scene of serene, subnatural horror before me. Oh my god. Maggie Matthews had the complexion of Stilton cheese, chalky white and pale, exsanguinated blue. Rigor mortis had petrified the scream upon her face, and her eyes were boiled eggs left to grow cold and forgotten in their cups. Yet she moved. Oh my god, what is that? A slow mythological jerk as the color's mandibles chewed through her torso. Oh man, look at that. Oh, that's awesome. Is there any way to... Whoops. A .45 caliber slug of pure gold shot through the eye into the brain. A one-shot kill. At least that's how I played out in my imagination just before I pulled the trigger. But the caller had other intentions. Whether it heard the outtake of my breath or the slightest creak from the trigger mechanism, the thing somehow knew my bullet was coming for it. It thrashed its head downwards, meeting the slug with the heavy chitin that adorned its monstrous skull. Exoskeleton and pitch-black blood showered the trees beyond, but the injury did nothing to slow the cooler down. Both guns blazing, I dove clear as the cooler's cruelly serrated arms plunged into the punga and tore it apart. I rolled to my feet as it came about and barely managed to put some solid Rumours between myself and the cooler before those chitinous scythes came lashing out once more. In this case, barely turned out to be not quite enough. One of the brute's arms found nothing but air. The tip of the other raked the coat, shirt, and flesh on my right side before burying itself into the tree trunk. While the cooler thrashed and hissed, trying to wrench its arm free, I gritted my teeth against the searing pain in my side, raised my Colts, and put my 2 remaining slugs through the monster's eyes. Like the lovers of Giggling Glade, those bullets kissed in seclusion and then went their separate ways. The cooler's skull, already weakened by my maiden shot, disintegrated. Its massive body thrashed for a few moments in decapitated confusion, and then slumped limply to the sodden earth. That's crazy, man. Oh. My moment of victory was a short one, as my bleeding flesh reminded me of the cost. There's no shame in crying, and I did just that as I took the bottle of Farland's remedy from my coat pocket, unstoppered it with trembling hands, and downed its contents. Like most of the Falconer alchemist's brews, it simmered with welcome warmth on the way down and burned like a bitch as it got to work. I eased myself to the ground and put my back against a tree and tried not to scream at the agony of Farland's remedy knitting my insides back together. After what seemed like an hour, but was probably only a few minutes, the pain subsided to the point where I could once again think and see with some clarity. As the remedy finished its work, I took in the clearing and its macabre inventory. It looked like most of Moonlight's disappearances would end up being explained by this one blood-soaked dell of shattered bone, tattered cloth, and shredded flesh. It was impossible to tell exactly how many people had shared Maggie's fate, but a quick skull count told me a dozen at least. And just when I finished counting, that's when I saw the eggs. I struggled to my feet and crossed the clearing, stepping as best I could around the remains of the tragically departed. The first egg looked like it belonged to the core I'd just slain. A long, waxy cocoon, some 10 feet in length, ruptured from the inside out. Its twin lay nearby. Same length, same burst open appearance. I'd brought one of those monsters down, but there was another out there, equally big, equally ferocious, and now wise to the fact that there was a falconer on its trail. Then I saw the third cocoon, obscured by ferns on the edge of the clearing. Despite the cold, clammy air, the sweat beaded on my skin as I limped over the thing and took in its grotesque beauty. It was smoother, more delicate than its cousins, like a baby's cot made of pure silk. The top had been neatly slit open and its contents disgorged without the slightest disturbance to its smooth lines. And what sort of contents? Centipedes, 1,000 or more. A curling, wriggling mass of legs, mandibles, and glistening, supple chitin. 1,000 near-mindless creatures that, when joined, forged a single and fiendishly clever intelligence. A cedar. I looked from one cocoon to the next, and to the next. This wasn't a color problem. This was a bloody infestation. I felt a tear stinging my eyes once more. They weren't tears of pain this time. Farland's concoction had seen to that. No, they were tears of frustration and something else. Fear.